Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
Thank you for joining us for a Black Entrepreneur Experience. This is where we shine the light on the most successful Black entrepreneurs in the world. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards, and I am so excited today. I have the owner of Black Tie Babysitting, Oriabure-King. Black Tie Babysitting is a Dallas, Texas-based premier on-site childcare service for special occasions and events. Their tagline is, rolling out the red carpet for your littlest guests. Welcome, Hope, and thank you so much for joining Black Entrepreneur Experience.
Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure and an honor.
Tell me, I have given our audience a snippet of your bio. Can you share more about you and your company?
Sure. Well, I started Black Tie Babysitting 7 years ago, and it started as a sideline business, and it was a business that kind of fell into my lap. My sister was getting married, and I was in corporate sales and new business development, and had been in that type of environment, well, at that point, 14 years. And her husband had asked me to negotiate a couple of things for their wedding, and I did a good job, so he made me their quasi-planner, which I begrudgingly took on, and she had shared with me that she did not want children at her reception. And I'm Nigerian-American, my father is Nigerian, and culturally that was unacceptable for us to tell people they could not bring their children. And a lot of people had large families of children, and so my sister was like, well, you better figure it out, because I do not want these little people in my wedding reception. So where she got married, there were 3 floors, and on the second floor was available. So my plan was, you know what, we'll just make this room a play area. And at that time, I had a part-time nanny that dealt with my kids in my home. So I said, do you have friends that have good backgrounds and want to make some money? And she was like, sure. And I was like, I want you all to watch kids at my sister's wedding during the reception. And so, it was, when I think about how we did it that day, it's so bootstrapped compared to the company we are now. But literally, I had a piece of paper that I write your first and last name for the parents, their kids' names, and their phone number. And that was it. And you came in at the door, you dropped your kids off, and you signed them in that way. And I had bought hot dogs in a slow cooker, and I packed up all my kids' personal toys and popped them in this room. And at the end of the night, all the parents were like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest company ever. Whose business is this? And I was like, it's mine. I didn't have a name. I didn't have a logo. I didn't have anything. But I knew that there was an audience that wanted this service, and I could refine it, I felt. So I just said, hey, write your email address on that piece of paper, and I'll get you our information soon. And I worked at a web design firm at that time doing new business development and had really good relationships with our IT and creative staff. And so I walked in and said, hey, guys, I need a favor, and within a week I had a logo, and the name just came to me one day because, it was babysitting, but Black Tie established that it was a formal babysitting and not quite easily. So, that's really how the company came about. But it quickly became a full-time passion, even though it was a part-time business. And then in 2014, I incorporated. I quit my corporate job and decided to take it full-time.
Tell us about that transition. Was that easy for you, Hope, to make that transition to quit your full-time job and to move right into your business, Black Tie Babysitting, full-time?
It was a hard transition, and not so much that it was hard to go from working for someone else to working for myself, especially something that I was passionate about. But it was the transition of my lifestyle. That was the hardest transition because, I'm a single mom. I have 4 children. Mm-hmm. I get very little financial support from their fathers. And, I had a house I was renting. I had a car note. I was paying a mortgage and childcare at that time. And, I literally had to call my father and ask him if I could let my lease go on my house and move in with him and my parents. And these folks were empty nesters, with silk shower curtains and mirrored tables. This was not ideal for me and my troop to move back in. And he's an entrepreneur. And he said yes, and so I packed up my kids and we left our home and just my whole locus of control to come to a multi-generational household with my parents, because that was the biggest bill at the time that I had. And my father gifted me with another gift. He said, Hope, why are you paying for childcare if I'm at home? So that was huge bills that were taken off of me that I could not have to wonder, oh my gosh, how can this company pay these bills? When at that time it wasn't. I could just focus on building the company. What I will say, I got a part-time job. And that in itself was a very humbling experience, because I worked in corporate America. I had done very well, and I made good money. And I got a part-time job making $7.50 an hour, just so I wouldn't have to ask my parents for cash, that type of thing. And so that was the transition. It wasn't, like I said, it was easy to do what I was passionate about every day, but it was the lifestyle sacrifices that had to be made that made it a tough transition at times.
Hope, thank you so much for that transparency there, because that is extremely humbling. And one of the things that I heard you had mentioned, that your dad is an entrepreneur, and many African Americans or individuals that are starting businesses, they don't have that luxury or that experience to have someone that is an entrepreneur in their family. So tell us about that, going from corporate America to this $7 an hour job, and then your father being an entrepreneur. Tell us about that journey and the support that your family offered you. I think that's huge.
Yeah, well, the thing about it is that my dad, he owns a janitorial company, and he started that company in 1982. So I was very young. He had gotten laid off from a job, and him and my mother had just bought our first home, and we barely made it into middle class, and we had made it, and he just made the decision that he wanted to own a business. So he took that money to seed his business, even though he was a working entrepreneur at first. And the one thing I can say is I saw my dad work a lot. I mean, he worked a lot. He would have 2 and 3 jobs just to supplement the other job. And he was stressed at times, but also I saw the fact that I could see my dad. My dad came to my school plays. He did my hair for cheerleading, and he was always there because he didn't work for someone else. It offered him that flexibility. And I think with me growing up that way and having 4 children, and 3 out of my 4 children have special needs, and I wanted that flexibility. And I knew that being an entrepreneur would afford me that. But I also, because my father was an entrepreneur, I knew that the sometimes heartache and the grief and the stress that came with it too. But being able to have that flexibility with my kids outweighed all of that. And I saw my dad go from where, he was having to, have gentlemen's agreements to get equipment and to get supplies to run his company, to where, this man was making $10,000, $20,000 a month. But it was a process. And the thing with him being an entrepreneur, which was so awesome for me, is that gave me social capital, which is what you're talking about. When you don't have that, someone who can tell you, you can visualize it, that he started from the bottom and he was an entrepreneur and he did it, and I can do that too. That was social capital, that it was never a fear of mine that my business will fail and I won't make it. It was never a fear at all, because I saw him. And so I think it's important that people who are entrepreneurs reach back, and not so much reach back, but actually I heard a woman speak at a luncheon, and it was so beautiful what she said. She said to pull people up as you are rising. So I don't think that entrepreneurs should wait until they've made it to this top, this pinnacle of what they feel is success to start helping people. I'm still a small business we're intentionally growing slow. It has a lot of dynamics and reasons, but I try to help as many people as I can. If you say, Hope, I want to start a business, I'm with you. Even my employees, one of them told me the other day, and I was like, I'm so excited, girl, what do you want to do? How can I help you? So I just think that journey was so much influenced by my father being an entrepreneur. And then the job, there were days where I was like, I'm making $7.50 an hour. And I have command of my mind. I went to college. I have an undergraduate degree. I worked at Fortune 500 companies, closing multi-million-dollar contracts with Whirlpool. And I'm being told that I'm being talked down to. And I got to the point where I realized that this was a classroom for me. It was on the job training for me as a business owner. Because working within the company I was working at, I got to see how they ran the company, how they ran everything from commission to staffing to holidays to everything, and even their training and their philosophies and their methodologies. And those are all things that I got to take with me, and now I can apply those in my company if they make sense. So I do think that, when you decide you're going to do a job, you have to do that job, and everything else you put aside. A lot of people didn't know I worked at that company for a year before people knew I even owned my own company. And it was because I signed up to do a job, and I was there to do the job. And whether that was wiping mirrors, vacuuming floors, straightening dresses, I worked at a bridal shop, then that was what I needed to do.
Hope, I have walked a little bit in your shoes, and I think that is really beautiful that you had shared that at one point. And I like what you shared to the audience about the transparency, and that's always a question as a solo business owner myself, and I work a 9-to-5. So before, I've always had the entrepreneurial bug, but before, when I relocated from California to Las Vegas, I was making $6 an hour with a degree, riding a bike in 110-degree weather, back and forth to work, because I was at that point a single parent. And so we do what we have to do as a mother and, to survive. And so one of the things that you had mentioned about sharing that they didn't know that you owned a business. I find nowadays companies they want to know all of that. You have to sign documents indicating what you're doing on the side, which is really interesting. It's a lot different than back in the day when you had your freedom and flexibility, your Saturdays and Sundays, or what you did after hours. It shouldn't be a question. You shouldn't have to divulge that information if you feel that it's not necessary. But now companies they say it's the non-compete. They want to make sure that you're not competing with them. Some of that, is it really the competition, or is it a situation where Big Brother is always watching and they want to ensure that it's almost like they don't want you to excel? I have a real different perspective on that.
I think it's absolutely, they don't want you to excel. And it's because, loyalty to jobs is at an all-time low. Most people are going to look at a better opportunity and move. They're not going to say, when I did my undergraduate degree and I started working at IBM, there were people who I sat with who had been with the company for 45 years, who'd been with the company for 25 years. And I sat there knowing I didn't want to be there for more than 3. And I knew most of the people that came in with my hiring class, by the end of our first year, there was 3 of us that were still there. This was just a stepping stone to get somewhere else. And so, I was reading an article the other day that talked about the side hustle for the millennial. The millennial doesn't view the side hustle as a way to make money. They do it so that eventually they're going to hit it big and they won't have to work. They don't view it as a part-time. This is what I'm going to do. And when this becomes scalable and I can either sell the company or, I hit it big and everybody buys everything I'm making, or, I get on Oprah's favorite things and it's over, then I'm going to walk away. And I think companies realize that now. So you're almost like a flight risk for them if you have a business. Because they're like, man, this girl could, blow up and then she's going to leave. And I do recall I had an interview. And of course, they had done research on me and things like that. And he asked me about my company, point blank. Asked me what it was, how it worked, and, because I needed that job at that time, I kind of told him, hey, this is a side hobby thing. I'm a single mom, I have 4 kids. This is just to shore up my finances. I played it off like that. And it was so interesting because he recently approached me to come back in and do some consulting work for him. And he was like, I didn't think that you would consider it because I know your company is doing so well. So, I do believe they're just, they think it's a flight risk if you have a side business. And I think the other part of that is that companies, and this is a reality, is that a lot of sideline businesses and small businesses, startup entrepreneurs who are still working for people, they use their work time to do that work. And they use those work resources to do that work. You're printing out contracts on the printer. And, I did it. When I was sidelining my business, I would be answering emails, taking phone calls, because I was in a new business development role. It wasn't odd for me to be on the phone or on my computer or looking at contracts. They just didn't know they were mine, and it wasn't there. So I think that's what they're doing. Yeah, I think that's what they're doing, to be honest. And I can't blame them, people even with my company and with my employees, they're contract workers. And, I get bumped off for other, hey, well, I'm going to go do this job because they said they're going to pay me this much, and it's just like, but you made this commitment. I have staff ratios that have to be met. So.
Hope, what is one valuable lesson you wish you knew before starting your business?
Wow, so many. So many. So many. I wish that I would have not let my own personal weaknesses and fears decide how the management of my company. And it was because I personally had worked, new business development is brutal. It's what have you done for me lately? You closed 1.5 million and everyone's giving you high fives, and then the next month you're sitting in your office, your manager's office, explaining why you don't have any money on the books.
Right.
And I always felt like they didn't treat you like a human. You were a horse and you just worked. And so I took that type of personality and methodology into my company, and because I didn't want to treat people like that, I let that kind of dictate my management style. Like, I would pay my people the night of the event. And my father pulled me in and was like, oh, no one gets paid that way. That's a cash flow problem. You can't pay people the night of the event. But I was like, Daddy, what if they need money to pay bills? Or, I just feel like if they're working and it's their weekend, then they should be able to get money right away. And my dad was like, oh, no, that's not the way you do it. You set up, when they're paid, you set up a process. And what I was novice and not understanding is I had that mentality of, this is when my company has 3 employees. But you have to establish a process for when your company has 20.
Absolutely.
which is where we are now. And so that fear and that my own thought process kind of jaded what made sense for me to do in my company. So I think that if I had to do it over again, I would step back away from myself and not involve so much of my personality and process. Like definitely in the way I run my company and what we advocate for and our mission, all that is my passion. And it should be when you're running a company, to me, if you're truly authentic. But as far as process, I need to step back and look at best practices and not how I thought to do it best. That's one thing I would say.
Now, how do you define success, Hope? What does that look like for you, and how long did it take to manifest in your life?
I think success for me is always evolving. And I can use a small example. I remember when I had my fourth child, and when I had my fourth child, I had separated from my children's father. So I went through that pregnancy and delivering everything alone with 4 children, young children. And I remember I went to go visit my mom. My mom's an educator at her school. And I saw one of her friends that was a counselor, and I was, I had all this anxiety because I was coming to my mom's school, and, my mom was very secret about how her grandchildren looked, and I could not find my little baby's shoes. He kicked it off somewhere, and I couldn't find it. And I was panicking, and her friend was like, Hope, what's wrong? I said, I can't find the baby's shoes. You know my mom. She's going to be mad at me. And she was like, Hope, she's not worried about those shoes, baby. She said, you have your kids. They're clean. They look good. You look good. She said, you're fine. And she said, Hope, you have to understand your levels of success. This is a success that you got all these kids here by yourself, safely in their car seats, and you have them all here all together. And she said, one day, all your kids will be able to get in the car by themselves, and that will be a level of success. And I remember when that happened, like, what? I didn't have to put anybody inside or put a seatbelt on. I could just get in my seat and say, everybody buckle up, And I think it's the same with your business. It's a baby, and as it grows, your success evolves. So I remember when I first started my business, my success was getting people to have inbound calls to say, hi, heard about your company, want to book your service. That was a success. And then I remember when I first started my company, someone told me, Hope, people will never pay you to watch kids at a wedding. And now they do, and they pay me well. And, I'm in this situation where if you're like on Facebook and some of these wedding industry groups and people panic like, oh my God, I need somebody to watch kids. 8 out of the 13 responses is my company. And people are saying, oh my gosh, Hope is great, call her. And I remember one time someone posted up, hey, I need childcare. And they're like, I've already called Hope and she's booked. Like, it was like, I already know I'm supposed to go to her, but she's booked. And so, that is success for me, and I think for any entrepreneur, when you take something that didn't exist prior and you create it and someone says, I want it, that's success. If I got one booking a year, that's success, because I made a business that so many people told me no one would ever pay me to do, and they do it. And thankfully, by the grace of God, it's more than one booking. And, to date, we've done 100 plus events. We've done 50 venues between here and Houston. And we've serviced over 2,000 kids. And when I look at that, in the first 2 years of my business, we did 2 events. That was it to where we are now. So that's success for me.
Hope, that is really great. Can you tell us who are your top 2 influencers in your life, and what lessons did they teach you?
Absolutely, my father, number one. And it was just because I have been very close with my dad my entire life and emulated him my entire life. And, he is just one of the most humble, sweetest people you've ever met. And he's an elder in the African community here in Dallas. But if you meet him, he's so approachable and so kind. And He always wants to make you feel comfortable. And he taught me that no work is above you. If you say it's a job, it's a job. Because when my dad started his company, we were really young kids. But, man, after those first couple of years and we got older, he started taking us to work. We started cleaning buildings, you know. And I remember being like, Daddy, I cleaned the bathroom. He said, that's not right. You have to go back there. It's not cleaned right. And never in my mind did I think, I'm only 8 years old. I just knew it wasn't done right. And that was the bar that was set. And so, you know, I never had that excuse. Oh, I'm only 38 years old, or oh, I've only been in business for 7 years, or oh, that's not right, Hope. So you have to go back and you have to fix it and you have to make it right. Whether it's my payroll system, my accounting, or whatever, you know, I just don't have that excuse that I'm a young business. And that is definitely as a result of my father. And he is just such a larger than life figure. I can't even think of anybody else that's had as much influence on me as he has. But someone that I will say is a lady who does a podcast called This Parent Stayed Home. And her name is Allie LaPrete. And when black tie was still a hobby, because that's what I called it for the first 2 years, I wasn't running it like a business. I wasn't treating it like a business. I would do cleaning with my dad because we had a couple of house accounts that we didn't give to employees just because of sensitive information, or, you know, we had relationships with the people. And I would clean with my dad these accounts, and I would listen to her podcast. And it was just so encouraging. And I really feel like it's what made me make that transition, that this is a business and I want to run it like a business, was listening to her podcast. And because her deal is that, you know, being a parent entrepreneur was the greatest gift you could give your kids, because it afforded you that flexibility, but you could also teach your children about business. And I mean, so that's why I'm so humbled to be on your show, because your show is going to be transformational for somebody who's out there sitting thinking, oh, I could do that, but you're taking away that but, and you're replacing that with how. And with those interviews and from people like, you know, other entrepreneurs, I wouldn't even think so much as myself, but what other people have to offer, that's going to change that how to win. And there'll never be a why. It'll just be a win. And so I think those are probably the two most influential people who got me to where I am in my business.
Wow, that is so beautiful. And the reason I say that is when I hear you talk about your father with such adoration, and it's another point, and it may be a little off point in terms of entrepreneurship, but I think it makes sense. And I think about a lot of us when we get into relationships, and I mentioned at the forefront at one time I was once a single parent. We don't really see how critical it is when we get into a relationship, and that relates to family, that relates to marriage, that relates to business. And the greatest influencer in a child's life is really the father, which is the head of the household. And I think that we, as the African American community, the Black community, the African diasporas, we miss that point, and that is really a key factor from our roots. The father is the head of the household, and that is why the enemy or the system fight us so much for keeping our families intact, because when you have a very strong man heading that household, everything else is going to work out fine. And so for you to actually give the props to a lot of us will say our mothers, and we love our mothers, and our mothers are amazing. We are mothers. Fathers are so important, and I don't think that we give them the just due that they deserve. So my father has passed on. It's been well over 30 years. And I think about what that relationship would have been like My mom is 89 years old, and she is my greatest cheerleader and my biggest critic. And she still walks 3 to 5 miles a day and just amazing. So I hear what you're saying, and thank you for sharing that. I think that it's going to really bless a lot of people just knowing how humbly you are honoring your father. And so I want to say from Black Entrepreneur Experience, thank your father on our behalf for just sowing into your life. And you are an amazing example. I've seen your website and I've heard some podcasts that you were on. So you are a great inspiration to the Black entrepreneurs. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Hope, talk to a younger you. What advice would you give you, the younger you?
The advice I would give the younger me is that to be comfortable with me and where I am and what I'm doing. Because I grew up in a household with 4 children, and my sister and I are only 9 months apart. And it was because my mom got pregnant with me quickly after she had my sister, but I was born premature, hence the name Hope. And my oldest sister is a phenomenal woman. And she cast a big shadow when I was growing up, because she was gifted and talented and was in the International Baccalaureate program. And I had not found me yet. And so I would sit in the shadow. You know, we went to high school together, and I was a freshman when she was a senior. And it was just like, oh my gosh, you know, and then she went to college on a full ride. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have a scholarship. And I killed myself in school trying to get a scholarship just to show everybody I could get a scholarship like my sister. And then I went to get my master's degree so I could get a master's degree like my sister. And then one day I was working on my master's, and my kids are running around, and I'm trying to run this business, and I'm working, and I was like, well, why are you getting this master's degree? Is it going to change your life? Is it going to help you reach your goals? And I said, no. And I stopped. And everybody's like, you're only 8 classes away, but I stopped because it wasn't. And that was too much time I was devoting to try and meet somebody else's mark. And I think that I wasted a lot of my time trying to meet somebody else's mark. And if I would have been more comfortable with myself and recognizing the accomplishments that were right for Hope, I could have been a little bit further, a little bit easier. Because I still think I would have ultimately ended up here. It would have just probably been an easier route than the one I took of, you know, self-doubt and doing what other people wanted me to do. And, you know, I mean, even my foray into corporate America, that wasn't really what I ever wanted to do. But I knew that IBM was a big name. And my parents could say, my daughter works at IBM. Because my sister, she works for the federal government and has a very important job and does very important work. And, you know, they're very proud of her. And so I wanted them to be proud of me, too. And so I did all this stuff for a while. Then I ducked out of that race and got into the one that was mine. And, you know, I've achieved success, and I realized something. My parents are just as proud of me as I was in my own lane. I didn't have to come in second to what she was doing. I could come in first for myself. So,
Hope, that's very profound. And for parents out there, that is so key that you allow your children to be individuals. Even though your mom and dad did, it's what we perceive. You know, and one of the things as an authentic voice coach, what I do is I help individuals find their passion, find their authentic voice, because what I find, you are so right, and I ran that same field, but in a different lane. So just like you, I was trying to find myself. I find that 80%, this is my own statistics, 80% of individuals hate what they do. They hate their environment. They hate their lives. And they're living a life of default and not a life of design. And so we have a tendency of doing things because our mother said we should be a doctor or a teacher or a nurse, instead of taking time for ourselves and saying, what is it that I really want to do and be in life? And that it can be very painful, and it takes a lot of time. But I commend you for finding your lane, finding your voice, and you're absolutely correct. Parents, a lot of times that's what we say, our parents accept us. We set this bar. And in our minds, sometimes we don't even know subconsciously that we're even trying to run someone else's race. Mm-hmm. And it's great that you recognize that you were running out of your lane and you found your lane and you're absolutely successful. And, you know, like the Bible says, your gift will make room for you, and your gift has made room for you. So that is awesome.
Yeah.
What is a technology tool or a technology platform that is a must-have for you in managing your business day-to-day, Hope?
For managing my business day-to-day, I would say a technology tool that we use is PayPal. And the reason why it is so important for our day-to-day is because our invoicing. Because 85% of my business is weddings. So people can book us anywhere from 6 months before their wedding to 2 weeks before their wedding. And so depending on how early you book us, we'll do payment plans. But so that PayPal is a great way for me to manage who's been invoiced. And I always let them know in their contract, you know, your deposit is due upon receipt of the contract. And I can send a payment link with the contract in it. And then it also puts that the final payment will be due on or about, and it's usually the Friday 2 weeks before their wedding. And so, but all that information is there in the invoice. So I can put like, you know, that this was the balance and then this is their, you know, so it does some accounting for me without me having to have an accounting person. Because, you know, we all wish that I could have a whole office of people to do everything that I need to do. But when you're a solo entrepreneur or you're a small business owner, you don't have the money to bring all these people onto your team. But this stuff still needs to get done. And I'm not a math person. I'm not an accounting person. As you see, a payroll person. I was trying to pay my people in cash the day of, you know, but with that technology, it has really helped me just keep track of all the invoicing and the payments. And, you know, anytime I need to show rendering of what I did in the year, I did in the month, I've got incredible reports that I can just pull. They're part of it. You know, also I would say that because we also use, I haven't used Square for a while because they've changed how much percentage they're taking out of the transaction. But Square also has really great reports that you can run. And so with me, our transactions are less than if someone I think we're selling product, but they also have a higher price value. You know, people are paying thousands of dollars in one transaction for us. So, but really, really great tools. I would say those are major for me.
And I agree. PayPal is a well-oiled machine. This is not an advertisement for them, but they are really excellent in their customer service, their delivery. If you have a problem with a vendor, they are really on it. So it is a very well-oiled machine. Let's shift gears, Hope. Let's talk about risk and or failures, however you want to define that. What is the worst moment in business and what was the takeaway?
The worst moment in business, I remember it like yesterday. We do the off-site care at special occasions and events, and I had a rather large wedding, and it was in the Belo Mansion, which is here in Dallas. Belo is the people who own WFAA and own the Dallas Morning News. They're a media giant here in the area, and they have a family mansion that's been in Dallas for decades. And so it is rented out for special occasions, meetings, and events. And so typically with our workaround, we have all the children in one room. But because this is a home, an older place, we had to separate the children by age group into 3 rooms. And so I took on the most challenging age group that we had. And then I had some other people who, employees that have worked with me for a while. They had another group of children. And for whatever reason, I think that they were talking to each other instead of putting a good eye on the kids. One of the children got out of the care room, went downstairs, and went to the reception. And this was a huge problem because, they're paying thousands of dollars to get the kids in a care room. And the other thing is that there were outside doors. This place is in downtown. So there's outside doors that they could have easily got onto the street. There was another wedding going on simultaneously. They could have gone to someone else's wedding. So this is like all my fears realized. Why everybody is scared to bring us on site. It's the first question. Are you going to be able to watch kids? Are you going to make sure they're going to be able to get out? And then this happens. Now, we were I'd probably been in business for, I would say, 5 years by the time this happened, even less, like 4 years by the time this had happened. And so I'm sitting there running my room and I'm checking, here and there with my other staff. And this woman comes up and she said, "Who is Hope King?" And I was like, "I am. How can I help you?" I'm thinking, oh, she's going to give me some great accolades. No, she was reaming me. She was like, "I am not happy." And she was the bride's mother and also the person who had paid me. So she knew how much my services cost. And she was just like, "I am not happy. This child got out." And, I apologized profusely. And I was shocked. But, I still had children to watch. We still had to continue on. So I had to, manage my own emotions and get it together. And then, I had to do some things. And at that time, I would leave doors open because I'd want parents to feel free to come in and check on their kids. But I made an executive decision that night to shut doors. We no longer keep doors open after that night. But then on the back end, I'm very passive aggressive when it comes to personal relationships. And being an entrepreneur will make you face every fear, every shortcoming, everything that's wrong with you. Being an entrepreneur will make you face. And I had to, discipline my staff. And so basically, I had to inform them in writing that they had a violation, give them a copy of our employee handbook, let them know what they had done, and that if it were to happen again, they would no longer be employed with my company, which is a very difficult thing to do. But I had to do it. And, then I was just, I had to explain to everyone, guys, that could have been the end of my business right there. That one bad review is it. And I've worked so hard, I've invested so much. At this time, I had quit my job and I'm living with my parents, and this is not Meet the Robinsons. This is much different living with my parents, and made these sacrifices, and then it would just be disappeared. And like you said, I would end up having to go back to corporate America and doing something I hated, which I think is like death in itself almost, to be able to be given the opportunity to do something you love and then have to walk away and do something you hate. And so, that was probably the worst situation. To this day, it still hurts, But, the next day I had to, respond to the mom and tell her I was sorry and what could we do to rectify the situation, that had never happened. And we have, we've made some changes to make sure that would never happen again. And, it just turned out that it was a blessing that she was over it. She didn't respond. She didn't care. She didn't follow up. She didn't write a review, a negative review, nothing. And to this day, the only people who know about it are the people I told about it. And that is amazing, because that could have sunk my company. So that was probably the worst thing that's ever happened. But it's so interesting that you talk about risk, because what I like to tell people is that my number one job at Black Tie is mitigating risk. That's all I do every day, is figure out how to mitigate those, because we typically are in places we're at private events, but they're public places, like hotels and venues, and you have people who are there at the event, but you have also the general public. And so safety is a big issue, safety outside of our rooms, safety in our rooms. So, I make sure that my staff has sexual abuse prevention training. And because not only do we have to be mindful of the adults that are coming into the room, because they can place seeds into children. If they see a child with a certain toy, then they can use that later to coerce them to do something. Or also there's a lot of peer-to-peer abuse now as well. So you have to be mindful of that and just staying on top of that. I mean, we've got procedures once we're in the room. We've got procedures in the hallway. We've got procedures in the bathroom. All these high-risk places. I've got professional liability insurance that took me 5 years to be in business to get. Because it was like God blessed me with the right insurance agent who asked the right questions, and I had the right answers. And I could say, look, these employees have been with me for 5 years. We have done this for 5 years. So when the underwriters were pushing back, she pushed back, and I was able to get that insurance. So, yeah, there's a lot of risk when it comes to what I do, but I'm constantly thinking about it, mitigating it, trying to figure out, this past year we introduced nursery pagers so that we could page parents in the event instead of having to go and look for them. And I've been to where they had babysitting at a networking event, and the lady who was watching the kids came out, and the fear on my face, like, oh my God, is she coming to get me because my kids were showing out? So I was like, that experience taught me, oh my goodness, no, we need to have pagers so it's very discreet, and just page them and let them know, hey, if you're a breastfeeding mother, you need to come feed your baby. Or, we also give them out to special needs kids, just in case your child needs you, that type of thing. I can't have a pager for everybody. They're quite expensive. But we introduce those. So, and then always ongoing training. And, I'm working on now, I really want to build a curriculum that I can sell to other special occasion companies about how to deal with special needs kids at events, because I myself have a son with autism. So that is just very close to me. And I know what it's like to have a child that has autism. It almost blacklists you from public life. Because it's not so much you and your child, but how the world reacts to you and your child. So, yeah.
Thank you for that, Paige. If you conducted this interview, what is the one question that you wish I would have asked you, and I need you to answer it also?
That's a really great question. I would say, what do you think being an entrepreneur has taught your children? Just like you asked me about what my dad being one taught me, but what do I think has taught my children? Because, that I do this because of me. I get to do what I'm passionate about, but I do it because of them. Because I think being an entrepreneur made me a better mom to them. I'm better accessible to them when they need me. But it also teaches them about challenges, about victories, about success, and about sadness, and about disappointment. Because I take them on my roller coaster ride. My older kids, I've taken them to networking events. I've taken them to job fairs. I just try to involve them in every bit of this process. Even if they're not an entrepreneur, they don't grow up to be one, they'll be an employee who will still need those skill sets, will know how to present themselves. And, like I went to a networking event, and I took my son to an open house. And, there was a DJ trying to sell me on DJ services and stuff like that. And when we left, I said, so what do you think? I said, did he do a good job? My son said, yeah, he did. I said, why? Why do you think he did a good job? And he could say it was because he asked these types of questions, and he did that, and this, that, and the other. And that showed me he was observing. And those are skills that are transferable and that will help them succeed now that, my daughter starts high school next year, and my son is a sophomore in high school. And, even my little one, I have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, and they tell everybody that my mommy goes to work. They know that I work. And my littlest one always says, how's work today? He never belittles the fact that when I leave this house that I'm working. And so I think that's what I would like to know, what I hope that I'm teaching my kids. And I hope that's what I'm teaching them, that, I always tell people, it's something I can't stand people tell me, and I'm sure you probably heard this when you were a single mom, is, oh my gosh, your hands are so full. Your plate is so full. And I got so tired of hearing that one day I reacted. And I said, yeah, my plate is full. And I said, the best thing about having a full plate is that I don't have to go back for seconds. Mm-hmm. When this life is over, I would have done everything I wanted to do. And so I just want my kids to know that they're the only limit that they have. And no matter how hard something looks, no matter if it even looks like it's something you probably shouldn't do, if you feel like you can do it and you want to do it, and it's legal, I'll put that reference on there, and it's legal because I will not bail you out of jail, then you should do it.
And Hope, one of the things that I've read a report, and one of the things employers are looking for college graduates, they are saying, or high school graduates, they lack critical thinking skills. And I think that that's what you're instilling in your children, is that critical thinking skills and like you said, problem solving, which is something that you can't get in the classroom, or the classroom is not teaching.
Yeah.
Hope, we're coming to the conclusion of our interview. And again, what we're going to do now, it's called Fun Facts Lightning Round. And this is where I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I want you to give very quick answers. It's just letting the audience know some fun facts about you. So are you ready for the lightning round?
I'm ready.
All right, Hope, the last movie you saw.
The last movie I saw was Zootopia.
You relax doing what?
Reading news articles.
Your favorite singer?
Is Jasmine Sullivan.
Your favorite dance song?
Hammer Time.
What food you eat every week, no matter what?
Every week, no matter what. Yogurt.
And your favorite month?
June.
Can you share, this is not a fun fact, this is actually a question. Can you share with our audience a parting piece of advice you want to offer?
The thing I want to offer is that even if you're just thinking about being an entrepreneur, you are one. To think and to do and to start is hard. But if you're willing just to take the first step in either one of those directions, you're an entrepreneur. And don't ever let anyone belittle what your business is or what your service is. You are an entrepreneur. And if it makes sense, then it's going to work. I don't know if Black Tie will ever be a multi-billion-dollar company, but as long as I'm able to do what I love and my company builds a bridge for parent work-life balance to exist, then I'm happy that it keeps training my children for the future. I'm happy. But if I would have stopped at any point and said, I don't think this is going to work, or why should I do this? I make good money, or I'm in corporate America already. All my business wouldn't exist. The people I employ, the events we've done, the children we've helped, the families we've helped, those moms who had a baby and hadn't got to dance and party for a year, who come in drunk and hug me and thank me profusely because they got to enjoy that wedding, that wouldn't happen. So that's what I would impart.
And Hope, what is the best way for our audience to connect with you?
I am on LinkedIn, You can send an email. I have a contact form on my website, which is www.blacktibabysitting.com. Or you can send me an email to info@blacktibabysitting.com. Or, those are the best ways to get me, and I try to get back to everybody within 48 hours. I do not have office hours on Mondays or Fridays, just because of the nature of the business, and my little folks need me.
That's a wrap. You've heard it here. Hope King from Black Tie Babysitting. Thank you so much, Hope.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. And again, an honor, and I'm humbled by the experience. And I hope to tune into the show and learn from the other entrepreneurs that you are going to bring to light.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.